Hello and welcome. I am DEJI360. These are tough times in Nigeria. The economy is far from friendly and millions in the country are feeling the economic crunch. But then the federal government has again given the assurance that it is working tirelessly to ameliorate the high cost of living crisis in the country. This assurance comes after citizens in some states took to the streets to protest rising cost of food. The demonstrators say the rising cost of living, particularly food items, and the seeming inability of the government to address the issue forced them to block major roads to grab the attention of the authorities. The protests come on the heels of the recent increase in inflation rate, which reached a 27-year high, triggered by the rising cost of food items, a side effect, of course, of the increase in fuel price. Now, the picture becomes grim after recent reports from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security reveal that 88.4 million Nigerians are currently grappling with extreme poverty. Weighing in, a federal high court in Lagos has ordered the federal government to fix the price of goods and petroleum products within 7 days. Justice Ambrose Louis Alagua granted the order following an originating summon or motion now filed and argued by the applicant and human rights lawyer Femi Falana. However, authorities say their policies will help restore Nigeria's economy in the long term, but acknowledge that there will be challenges. While briefing members of the House of Representatives recently on the free fall of the naira and other issues affecting the monetary side of the economy, Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Olayemi Cardoso, said the economy must end through exports to boost the naira, adding that the CBN plans to instill confidence through stability in consumer prices and foreign exchange market. Take a listen to some of what he said.
On the exchange rate, permit me to say that, put simply, the exchange rate is determined by the dynamics of supply and demand for a product or service. In essence, similar to the pricing of cows or cars, the value of the US dollar in Nigeria is determined by the balance of US dollars entering the country and the demand for US dollars amongst Nigerians. Applying this demand and supply principle, let's examine how the exchange rate has performed in recent years. The exchange rate in Nigeria has increased or depreciated due to the simultaneous occurrence of two factors: a decline in the supply of US dollars coinciding with a surge in the demand for US dollars. Looking at the demand side of the exchange rate, it's important to note the growing number of Nigerian students studying abroad. In 1980s and 1990s, the need for US dollars for their living expenses was minimal. However, recent data shows a significant change. According to UNESCO's Institute of Statistics, the number of Nigerian students abroad increased from less than 15,000 in 1998 to over 71,000 in 2015. By 2018, the figure had reached 96,702 students as per the World Bank. Another report projects the number of Nigerian students studying abroad to exceed 100,000 by 2022. Additionally, the UK's Higher Education Statistics Agency noted a 64% increase in Nigerians studying in the country, rising from 1,320 in 2019-2020 academic session to 21,305 by the 2020-2021 session. Given this data, it is crucial to highlight that between 2010 and 2020, foreign education expenses amounted to a substantial $28.65 billion, as per the CBN's publicly available balance of payments statistics. Similarly, medical treatment abroad has incurred around $11 billion in costs during the same period. Consequently, over the past decade, foreign exchange demand for education and healthcare has totaled nearly $40 billion. Notably, this amount surpasses the total current foreign exchange reserves of the CBN. Mitigating a significant portion of this demand could have resulted in a considerably stronger naira today. On the supply side of the exchange rate, to bolster the inflow of US dollars into a country, the economy must earn these dollars through exports, whether oil or non-oil, or by attracting foreign investments. A robust economic foundation is essential to produce goods and services that the global market is willing to pay for in US dollars. When the supply surpasses demand, the exchange rate appreciates, causing the price of the dollar to fall. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, the contrary has taken place. Regrettably, over the past 12 years, our oil exports constituted over 90% of our foreign exchange revenues and have declined from $93.89 billion in 2011 to $31.4 billion in 2020. From the aforementioned points, we can infer that the genuine issue impacting the exchange rate is the simultaneous decrease in the supply and increase in the demand for US dollars. It also seems that the task of stabilizing the exchange rate, while an official mandate of the CBN, would necessitate efforts beyond the bank itself and indeed to an attitudinal change of all our citizens. My concluding remarks, and I know I'm pressed for time, honorable members, my team and I are dedicated to refocusing the bank by giving primacy to price stability. We also aim to build confidence in the Nigerian economy through the maintenance of stability in consumer prices and the foreign exchange market. We are aware that the twin challenges of inflation and exchange rate depreciation on our economy are daunting. However, they are not insurmountable. Monetary policy actions are sometimes inhibited by transmission lags. Nonetheless, it is expected that the policy measures implemented by the bank will permeate the economy in the short to medium term.
Just one more minute, sir.
Inflation pressures may persist, albeit temporarily, but are expected to moderate significantly by the fourth quarter of 2024. Exchange rate pressures are also expected to reduce with a smooth functioning of foreign exchange market. We are committed to implementing policies that will ensure a stable macroeconomic environment and guarantee improved livelihoods for all Nigerians.
Now, as a temporary response to the nation's growing food crisis and the rising cost of commodities, President Bola Tinubu has ordered the immediate release of more than 102,000 metric tons of various grain types. That also includes grains from the Rice Millers Association of Nigeria. But the question is, how effective will this move be? Joining me now to discuss this further is Timi Simpson, who is an agricultural expert and co-founder and CEO of Replacon Next Farm Limited. He joins us from Abuja. Also joining me is economist Mukhtar Mohammed. So, Mr. Simpson, I think I'm just going to start from you. 102,000 metric tons of different grain types now the government has ordered released. What difference do you think that would make?
It will impact a great deal. Thank you, DG. It will impact a great deal in the sense that it will, in a way, if accessible to the populace, it will bring down the cost of foodstuff because there will be a higher supply than the demand presently seen. And this definitely will bring down the high cost of foodstuff. But majorly, we do not have grain as a foodstuff down south.
Yeah, that's true.
So they also need to look at the other root crops. But grains is okay. At least everybody would go for the rice and the beans, which have skyrocketed and hit the roof in recent times.
But then there's also the issue of how do you get this grain now? How do you get them to the people who need them most?
Thank you. That is the concern that the managers of these released grains will have to face. How will they get them to the market? How will they monitor that they will not be ordered or hijacked by middlemen and then taken in for hedging with regards to higher prices? But the way I think they should go about it will be through the cooperatives. NLC has quite a magnificent cooperative, including NNPC. Such cooperatives should be brought into the game, and they can distribute all the way down to the wards. I think that will be one way of looking at it being hijacked, and a majority of the people will get access, and I think it will be affordable. These cooperatives are already known for bringing down prices in their locality and to their members.
And of course, you did talk about down. Yeah, okay, go on.
Now, I was saying that they will be able to mop up all the grains released by the federal government if you target these cooperative, national cooperatives. That's not the productive ones, but distributive cooperatives like the NLC, like what you have in the federal ministries, as well as in NNPC and such organizations.
Okay, let me come to you, Mukhtar. We know this is not the first time government will be taking an action like this. Buhari did the same thing. Previous governments did the same thing. Do you think this will be any different?
Unfortunately, I don't think there's anything different. Like Mr. Timmy have said, you are trying to release a strategic reserve. There's no consistency plan. You don't even have a plan. You just make a statement. And that's been the bent of this current administration. They just make statements, and then you expect us to just believe your statement and go to sleep expecting that your statement is going to work for us. I think the challenge is that I don't think what they are trying to do is going to work out. Not because it's not good, but I don't think they've looked at the logistics. Sometimes they just come up with statements just for people to know that they are doing something. Outside of that, I personally don't think it's going to, because when you're talking about rice and beans, grains being relaxed, that's not all that Nigerians need, and that will bring down the price of these goods and services. We all know our challenge. Our challenges is that most of the things that we really as Nigerians use, even if you bring in the rice, then you don't have enough oil. You have to import oil, palm oil into this country because we've not been able to produce enough. Even when you want to look at the rice mill, we still have to import some of their machines outside the shore of this country, and they have to look for effects. So, and you are not bringing down tariff on imported household food items from outside the shore of this country that are coming in, like wheat, like cereal. So how do you think you will be able to address that if you are just looking at one area, just releasing of grain? I don't think that's the solution. That could help, but again, bringing down inflation drastically, you need to look at an holistic view of it. Look at the imports, look at what we have, look at what we import, and then drive down tariff and bring it in. Countries like Kenya have done that, and they'll be able to battle inflation. So I don't think it's rocket science if the government is really sincere to do what they ought to do.
So in essence, what you're saying is that, look, beyond these measures that the government is taking, the government needs to look at probably cutting down on the tariff of, cutting down tariff on food imports. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. But again, you look at this government, you think they would do it. I don't think they would do it, because if they hike the import duty already and saying it has to be willing buyer, willing seller import duty, the autonomous foreign exchange market. And so in Nigeria, the more you see, the less you understand. Government that is tagging exchange rate at 800, then tagging import rate at 1,400. So how do you want to fight inflation? So what you are doing is that you're attacking a rate that you use for consumption at 800, and a rate that is going to help your people in terms of job creation, bringing down inflation. You're attacking it at 1,410. So it doesn't follow. That's why I said it's more or less like the more you see, the less you understand where they are going to. So I don't think that this will be the solution to it. They need to do more. And I'm looking at an holistic approach to it. Bring down a tariff on imported household item or goods or food household food items that Nigeria would definitely do need. And I've mentioned one cereal. I've mentioned one
But
wheat.
then the question is, even if you cut down on the tariff, where do you even get the dollars to make the imports?
That's what I'm saying. You see, sometimes it's not about what we've seen as a challenge. It's not that Nigerians are not able to sort to that dollar to bring in their import, like we have seen. It's not that imports are not coming in, but they are coming in at a high price. So, and for you to bring down the price, even if I sort for my dollar at an exchange rate, and then I'm able to cushion the effect on the one I have control, the government have control over tariff. Can't you use tariffs as a tool to bring down those goods and services, and somehow you're addressing the shortfall that you could not address in the FX side, you're addressing it through tariff.
Let me come to you, Mr. Simpson. You are an agric expert here. Is it difficult for our homegrown agriculture sector to actually feed this country? Because the biggest challenge confronting us today, the reason why people are complaining all over the country, is because of the high cost of food. And you look at food inflation is at over 30%, around 33%. So that is what is actually driving Nigeria's inflation up. Is it that our local agriculture sector cannot feed this country?
DEJI, there is food in Nigeria, but it is not accessible, it is not affordable presently. We can produce to feed ourselves, and even as we are present or were doing in the past, we were feeding our neighbors equally, supplying food to our neighbors. Now, if we look at it, we need to create a new generation of farmers. But we shouldn't move away from the smallholder farming. We should continue with the smallholder farming model that we've enjoyed over the past decades, because that is where we can get enough to feed the country. We can get more people engaged in farming. Although some theories will tell you that where you have more people in agriculture, and that country will be a very poor country. But I think we should disagree with that. China and some of the Southeast Asian countries will depend on the labor force to feed themselves. And I think same thing should happen with Nigeria. We have the labor, we have the land, and we have the water. These are key ingredients to producing food. So we should look at what we have, create a new crop of farmers, open up new land. While doing that, we must also put into consideration that to keep our young people in farming away from the urban centers where they have no jobs and they just engage in restive activities, we should be able to get them and reverse the rural-urban migration by providing employment for them back in the rural areas, but with certain provisos. One, there must be housing estates close to their farms. There will be need for increase mechanization in our agricultural production. With that, if, like the federal government has said, they are trying to open up new 500,000 hectares of land. If they are doing that, if you clear a forest, it will still take you about 2 or 3 years before you can actually farm in a forest that has just been cleared. But if we go to the open savanna and Sahel regions, where we have secondary vegetation, that can be done easily. And we'll get our 500,000 hectares of land, and we can now inject these young blood onto the land. Like I said, they must have the capital to support them, access to easy, affordable capital. They must have homes close to their farms to be able to retain them in farming. And they will not want to go through the drudgery that their grandparents or parents have gone through in farming, which would make them age early. So mechanization needs to be brought in, improved seeds. There will be need for training. All this can be done within the year if we look at the right savanna and the Sahel region.
Okay, there's a question
because they have more sunlight and more water. This, I think, we can produce our food.
Okay, so sorry to interject. Let me even ask you this, because you're a farmer too. Why is it? Look, there's no question at all that, you know, in the past, say, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, we have done fantastically well in terms of local food production. At least we've moved up, even though we may not be self-sufficient yet, but we've done fantastically well, especially when it comes to rice production. But why is it that some of these local foods are still very expensive?
I think it's basically part of what Mukhtar had touched upon. The rush on the dollar, one. But then again, when you look at the production that it's local, there is no subsidy in our agricultural system until now that the Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture and Security, Food Security, are looking at giving the farmers 50% subsidy.
Well, what about the Anchor Borrowers program? Wasn't that subsidy in a way?
Anchor Borrowers program was not a subsidy. The farmers have to pay back 100%. But now the federal government is saying we will give you your fertilizers and every input you require at 50%, and we will bear 50%. So that is subsidy coming into agriculture. Hitherto, that wasn't there. And for the foreign imports of rice, the exporting countries subsidize their rice that we are importing. So it's more like dumping on us. So ours will definitely cost higher because we do not produce even the bags that we put the rice in 100%. Power is a key factor in terms of milling of the rice. Then transporting the paddy to the mills. Those are things that will increase the cost of rice against when compared to the imported ones.
Okay, Mukhtar, if you're there, let me get your take on this, because it's a bit of a paradox, you know. For a long time, we've been pushing for local production, and the general assumption had been that, look, if you're able to produce it locally, you get it cheaper. But that has not it has not translated to that, at least not with rice, and not with beans, not with some of these food items now that we've seen an increase in local production output.
I think Mr. Timmy have said it all. I think it's from him I'm hearing that finally the government is subsidizing agriculture. For me, that's good. Remember during the time of Akinwumi Adesina, the current president of African Development Bank, we had a lot in terms of rice production, then fertilizer for farmers. But I think during the time of President Muhammadu Buhari, we played lip service to it. Adwobe came in and said he was a farmer, is going to revolutionalize that sector. All the policies, key drivers of those policies were suspended and new policy came in. And I mean, he was the worst agricultural minister despite being a farmer. And we are where we are today because of some of those policies that were reversed. You see, when you talk about production in Nigeria, I keep saying it's easier for you to do production outside, it's cheaper than in Nigeria. Because you look at cost of production, in Nigeria, there are various factors that comes in terms of production, like you have said. We talk about the FX, we will not talk about the transportation, we talk about power, and also we also talked about taxing or tax. Is it taxing or toggery or tax, trying to intimidate these farmers to collect levies from them, one levy or the other, and then you have the insecurity also in there. So it's a whole lot. We cannot be able to do that because again, we still will turn back to the foreigner, because if you have the only time we've seen enough rice was when Emefiele did the rice pyramid in Abuja, and after that we've not seen rice again. It's like when after that pyramid came, rice became more expensive. So that shows that was all a political gimmick. So we need to be realistic. Uncle Boren's team was hijacked by politicians. They're the one collecting the loan, then in turn giving it to those that are farming. That's why you could see that a lot of those money were not paid back, and a lot of farmers that are into rice at the end of the day will have to. So it boils down to cost of production and cost of funding, because like he said, if you want to bring funding to the agricultural sector, you need to bring it to a low, very, very low interest rate. Remember before we used to have the agricultural cooperative bank, where cooperative will come together, an agricultural cooperative group will come together, go to that bank, they have loans, almost zero interest rate. Today, we don't have that specialized banking when it comes to agriculture. And even when, at the point when the CBN was giving agricultural loan at 8%, they were not able to monitor the bank. So this bank was still giving it almost at what you give it to commercial purposes. So we are the cause of our own problem. And then we have administrators that are not upping their game. And that has been a major challenge, even when we come up with policies that are very good, like the release of the grain, logistics is not there. They're not even looking at security. So I think it's boiled down to doing the right thing.
Just before we go, Mukhtar, if you were speaking to the government, what do you think it needs to do to begin to bring down food prices as quickly as possible? And I'd also want you to speak to what even state governments too should do, because it appears the focus has always been on the federal government. We talk less about state governments as well.
Well, let me start with the state government. I think Lagos State was the time that they were doing the lake rice. I mean, they got it from KB State to bring it into Lagos State so that they will have these goods cheaper for Lagosians. I think they should up their game on that. And I think we're made to understand that it's a particular market in Lagos these days that you go to buy food stuff at a discount, but I don't know how true that is somewhere in Alausa, and they open only on Saturdays. These are all short-term measures. I don't know if governors are excited to go into power, power production, power generation. But I don't think they're excited to go into agriculture. A state like Lagos should be looking at fishery. They should be looking at going to fishery as a means of farming, and they will become the epicenter of not only Nigeria but maybe all over the world. And so, especially starting with Nigeria, and then you get to Africa, then you begin to think of what nobody is thinking, that maybe because when it comes to farming, you don't seem to get that money immediately, especially when it comes to cash crop. I think the state government should also copy from what the federal government is saying. We are going to have about 500 acres. Then state government should be doing not up to like 100 acres or thereabout to augment what the federal government is doing. And if I were to advise the government, I think the government know what to do. You know that most of our goods that we use in this we patronize in this country, especially for our child, the children, the little children. We don't produce meat here. We don't produce so much of wheat here. We don't have the machineries even where we produce. You need to begin to look at giving true tariff waivers, not the kind of waivers you give because somebody is connected politically. We need to begin to think of how can bring down the cost of tariff, and that will in turn bring down the cost of some of these items. Because, like you say, we don't have control over FX. We don't have FX. We don't have FX. But we have control over tariff. So we should be able to bring it. Government should always take a bite. If this government have come in, they've received so much revenue, both the state, the federal, and the local government have been collecting so much because of the removal of subsidy. They should think also begin to take a bite on their revenue so that the Nigerians will not suffer this much like they are suffering now. The government have to do something soon, and they have to do it urgently before situation like this get out of hand. It was Niger State, now it's getting to Osun State. Sometimes these things just start, and if you don't nick it at the bug, it will maybe in a national crisis.
And Mr. Simpson, what do you think government needs to start doing right away? Government now across board to ensure food prices come down as quickly as possible, and that people can afford to to buy what they want to eat.
Thank you, DEJI. I think Mukhtar has said much about that in advising government. But I will go further in saying that the government, especially at the state level, should subsidize distribution, food distribution, especially the logistics of it. We have gotten the production right in our own way because we will always have food in Nigeria, apart from the impact of the insecurity, which has kept some farmers off their farms. When we look at distribution, that is where the subsidy should go, so that we can remove the impact of the middlemen from getting the food to the consumer, to our table. This, to me, is important. And secondly, we should start marketing Nigeria with our food through institutions like Nollywood. We should establish a kind of cultural agency attached to our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, just like you have the British Council and Govt Institute. Yeah. We should have a Nigerian one where we would push our culture and our food to our African brothers, so that people in Uganda can grow cassava as they are now doing, but they're not eating. They can grow the cassava and eat eba. Grow our sweet potato and use it as pounded yam. We teach them how to expand their culinary. In that way, we'll bring in more dollars easily. And then the government can now focus on reorganizing our food system and promoting what is best for our nutrition and food security.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the program, and thank you for your contributions there. I really appreciate it. We'll take a short break now, and we'll be right back. Stay with us, don't go away.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.